Hi there, I'm Lauren Sieber, and I chose Roald Dahl for this project. He is a well-known writer of children's books and even adult novels. I chose him because I believe his books are extremely interesting. They're dark and they're entertaining. I read a lot of his books as a kid, and actually I just read another one of his books called The Witches recently for this project. I want to learn more about him and his purpose behind writing, so that's why I chose him. He was born in 1916 in Wales. He had a hard childhood because his sister and his father both had tragic deaths, and so his mom sent him to boarding school, which is where he was inspired. His writings were inspired there, and he learned a lot, and just he actually was invited to trial chocolate bars, which is another moment in his life that inspired one of his most famous books, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. After he served in World War II as a pilot, he wrote screenplays, adult novels, short stories, poetry, and tons more. He is known for being the world's #1 storyteller. His stories were dark and comedic. They included violence and even death. The stories focused on appearances and the aspect of being ugly and how society handled that and how parents handled that too. He focused a lot on the parents' mistreatment of their children too, which I thought was really interesting. And even now, and as an adult reading that, it's hard to read. Yeah, these stories were controversial and included many things that parents definitely questioned. But his stories were some kind of an escape for kids. And even adults. They were full of adventure, fantasy, humor. They had twisted events, and it was just really relatable for a lot of people. So I'm going to read chapter 1 of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I have the online book. So here I go. Chapter 1, Here Comes Charlie. These two very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these two very old people are the father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket. This is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. This is Charlie. How do you do? And how do you do? And how do you do again? He is pleased to meet you. The whole of this family, the 6 grown-ups, count them, and little Charlie Bucket, lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place together, and there was only 1 bed. The bed was given to 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. They were so tired and never got out of it. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine on this side, Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon mattresses on the floor. In the summertime, this wasn't too bad, but in the winter, freezing cold draughts blew across the floor all night long, and it was awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house, or even 1 more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in a toothpaste factory, where he sat all day long at a bench and screwed the little caps onto the tops of the tubes of toothpaste after the tubes had been filled. But a toothpaste cap screwer is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked, and however fast he screwed on the caps, was never able to make enough to buy 1/2 of the things that so large a family